This is the Big Fish Cares podcast. Big Fish Cares podcast. And here's your host, Benny Fisher.
A landmine. This guy I have on my podcast literally got blew up almost by a landmine, and he almost crapped himself. Almost. Matt Morrison, welcome to the show, buddy.
I told you, nobody else had put that in the questions. So
yeah, so I mean, like, yeah, I saw that. I was reading through some of the show notes, and I was like, wow, that's like what I put out of all the stuff on here. We're going to cover like mental health. We're going to cover some hustle culture in the culture that we're in the industry that we're in. We're going to talk about mental health, emotional intelligence, ADHD. We're going to get vulnerable today.
Let's go.
But let's talk about the landmine though, real quick, because I gotta. Before we get into all that other serious stuff, let's just, tell me about this
landmines are kind of serious.
Well, yeah. I mean, at the time, how long ago was that? 20 years ago?
Yes, but actually coming up. Crap. Yeah, it was like 2003, 2004. Yeah, so I was in the Army, and we were over in Iraq, and this was like right before like IEDs and all that kind of stuff was it was just kind of becoming aware that this could be a thing, like the roadside bombs and them hiding them and disguising them and stuff. So they'd given us these briefings before we went over there, like, hey, landmines look like this, and, these different types of explosive look like that. If you see them, stay away, these types of things. They gave us these
it's like when I give my sales guys training on roof. This is what a gable roof looks like. This is what a hip roof looks like.
Yeah, basically. And then you go out there
like.
And everyone's like, what the heck is this Dutch hip? I've never seen that. He didn't tell me about a Dutch hip or a gambrel roof or whatever. There's like 45 other roofs that nobody ever talks about, right? And so anyway, we're out there, and we were at this site that was kind of out in the middle of BFE somewhere, and it had been just covered in sand, and somebody had dumped a bunch of like really large river rock down just to kind of make the sand kind of more stable for trucks to drive over, and then they put crushed rock on top. And I was in a survey crew, and we were supposed to lay out stakes to kind of line out some pads for the guys to come in and lay trailers down for these guys to sleep in, right? And so if you know anything about surveying, you got one guy on the gun on the machine laying out lines, another guy on a rod, and I was on the rod, and the guy in the instrument was like, go back, okay, put a stake in the ground, and I put a stake in, but every time I turned around, I was hitting one of those big chunks of river rock, because they were under the crushed gravel, and so I'd pull the crushed gravel away and dig out the chunk of river rock and pound the stake in the ground, and so every 50 feet or whatever, I was driving these things in. And at one point, I'm trying to hammer the stake in. It starts bouncing around again. And I'm all like, well, crap, I found another piece of river rock, because I was finding them every time I turned around. And scrape it away. And I'm like, this piece of river rock's big, And so I keep scraping away. I'm like, how big is this thing? And this place that we were at was an old, like, auto or car depot. Like it was a mechanics place that the Iraqi army had used or something like that. I'm like, is this an effing hubcap? What is this thing, And so I keep scraping. I'm like, how big is this? And then I was like, that's a pressure plate. What the?
As long as you don't hear click.
Yeah, exactly. But then I had been pounding this wooden stake in the top of a, and all of a sudden, like, holy crap, and all of a sudden the entire base shuts down because Morrison just found a stinking explosive in the middle of this depot. And we'd been driving all over the place, come to find out it was a vehicle mine. So me pounding a stake and was never going to put enough pressure in it but I didn't know that when I first found it, of course. And it was, it was long since, past its prime. It was never going to blow up. But again, I didn't know that.
You didn't know, yeah.
Yeah, you didn't know that when you just find a landmine, you dug it up and you were
what branch of the military were you in?
I was in the Army Reserves.
The Army Reserves.
Yeah.
So
I was in the Engineer Corps.
But you had the Engineer Corps, so that's not like the badasses.
I thought it was pretty badass.
All right, I don't know.
I was a Lancer. At the end of the day, ain't nobody cares once the bullets start flying. But
no, I hear you. But you're out there with transits, not with guns.
No, I had a 9mm. That's what they sent me to war with. So it was enough to make a whole bunch of noise while we got shot. But that's about all it was going to do.
So on a level of like 0 to 10, with like 10 being like John Rambo, where do you line up on the 0 to 10?
Let's say, I don't remember seeing John Rambo, but the guys like,
well, whatever, any
back
like
on
just
stateside, with like the horn rimmed glass. Yeah. So, picture everything you think about what the Iraq war was. that was the opposite of what I experienced.
So you were just out in the desert, just hot and sweaty, and
we were horizontal construction, right? So we had bulldozers, steamrollers, cranes, graders. We made dirt hard. We made dirt soft. We made dirt wet. We made dirt dry. We packed it down. We dug it up. We made it tall. We dug a hole. I mean, helicopter pads, roads. I mean, it's basically civil engineers, right?
There we go. All right. But, what was the craziest thing? What was the craziest thing other than the landmine that you? I was gonna say besides
digging up a landmine.
Yeah, besides digging up a landmine. Like, what was the scariest thing that you or was that the scariest?
Well, I mean, getting assigned to drive on a fuel tanker through the middle of Baghdad on a convoy when, they were attacking convoys and I'm on the Napalm Express. That was a good time. It's, at some point you're just like, you're driving through Baghdad and it wasn't exactly pretty. I mean, again, we're not a combat unit, but nobody cares when you're wearing camo. And
do you guys all look the same, or
exactly right? And I'm on a tanker, and so you're driving through Baghdad, and I'm a surveyor, and I got an M16 because they issued me one for the convoy duty, and I'm just like, all right, lock and load, and nothing happened, thank God. But
you never had to pull the trigger.
No, I mean, I walked into Iraq with 210 rounds and I walked out with 209, and that was an accident. So, it was all things considered, it was the best kind of deployment. It was boring, but, There you
go. So what made you get into the Army?
I still to this day don't know. My wife joined and I had a grudge. I had this thing where I was bitter against the recruiter. This recruiter had kind of did what recruiters do, hounded her a little bit, got her to join. And I
was out of high school?
No, maybe a couple years out of high school.
Okay.
But anyway, she had wanted to join, she intentionally joined. But kind of hemmed and hawed, and eventually she went in. And I was kind of upset. I was in the, oh, hell no, I'm not going in. That was the camp.
You don't strike me as a guy that's ready to let's go. No, so that makes a lot more sense that you chased a girl.
No, it wasn't even a chased a girl. I mean, me and her were already planning on getting married. And
I hear you, but you don't want to be apart from her. I mean, you guys were
It wasn't even that, honestly. It was more than that, right? So it was she said she wanted to go. And it wasn't like she was asking me I'm the submissive woman thing kind of, but it was just she knew that we were going to be together. And she's like, what are your thoughts? And I was like, you know what? I don't like the idea of you going. I had nothing against the Army in general. I wasn't some anti-patriotic thing. I just didn't like the idea of my girl going in and losing her personality and potentially going to war and all the stuff that could have come with it. I just didn't like the idea. It was selfish, right? But that was the thing. And she told me kind of what she wanted to do, why she wanted to go, what she wanted to learn. And I sat and I said, if I truly love this woman, which I did, and this is what she truly thinks is best for her because what she wants to learn, who she wants to be, where she wants to go in life, then who the hell am I to tell her no?
Yeah, but you didn't have to go, though. You could have just stayed at home and wrote letters.
The first part was me just saying, go for it, girl.
She's going,
right?
Yeah.
And so she went, and of course, then everyone's like, well, are you going to go too? And I was like, no, I'm not going to go. But I had this anger towards the recruiter, right?
Yeah.
And I'd never met the man, didn't know the man or nothing like that, right? We didn't live in the same city at the time, but eventually I moved to where she was. And I was like, one night I was just feeling a lot of just anger, just because he stole her from me. There's just all this stuff in my head, right? I'm like, you know what? It doesn't make sense. It didn't feel right to me to be that mad at a man, and I didn't even know what his face looked like. To me, there was just something not right about that. You know what I'm saying?
I was just it was the messenger out back then. So I mean,
this was 1998, 1999, something like that, right?
Yeah.
And so I was just it was 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, whatever it was. And so I'm like, you know what? I left, we were hanging out that night and I left her place, me and a couple of friends were at her place, and I left her place and I'm like, I don't feel right being this mad at a man and I don't even know what he looks like. And so I decided I don't even know what his office looks like. Let me just drive by the recruiter's office just so I can at least say I know what their office looks like. 9 o'clock at night. You want to guess who's at the damn recruiter's office? Freaking Sergeant Driver, right? And so we start talking, and of course he's like, how you doing, son? I'm like, no, go away, whatever. And I still was just like, no, but I don't know, somehow 2-3 months later I signed up. So
they're closers. Those guys are closers.
You know what? It wasn't. You know what? To be frank with you, I can say no to the best closer out there. Right? It wasn't him. Right? It was.
And that was before 9/11 too. So right, like that was.
It was not.
So it wasn't like you were all like jacked up, like, yeah, I gotta go fight for my country.
It was what I now call a nudge. Right? There was this thing that was just like,
why not? Yeah, it was just the rest of your life to go work a regular job. You're never gonna get that experience again. It felt like something was telling me to go, so I went and did it. Now, when you look back, because I know you're older now, but you've had 25 years under your belt of working, and
yep.
Where does that rank along experiences, like in jobs and things like that?
I am glad that I did it. I'm glad that I'm not doing it anymore. I saw a lot of cool stuff, did some cool stuff. I mean, shoot, when I was in Iraq, I woke up next to I mean, like Abram of I went to Abram's house, Is
it bad that I don't know who that person is?
Like Abraham, Abram, like father of Jacob and Isaac.
You mean like the Abraham from the Bible?
Like the Abraham, yeah, that one. That guy.
Wait, what do you mean? Like
I went to his freaking house because was in Iraq, and that's where the base that I was at was next to, and I went and took a tour of his house. I mean, that's some cool stuff,
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Got to blow some crap up, and there was some cool experiences, right? And I enjoyed it, and I learned some stuff. But
any trauma from the military, or you didn't really get to experience any of that stuff that some guys come back with?
I mean, again, I can speak to veterans because I went, and there was some trauma around leaving my family and not knowing what's going to happen, and some just going through the crap of like being in the military. But no,
but that could have happened. But that could have happened if you would have moved to like California or something. Where are you from? Where you grow up at?
I grew up in Maryland.
Maryland. So that would have been like you just even going to California for 3 years.
No, I mean, look, am I a veteran? Yes. Did I go overseas? Yes. Did I put my life at risk? Yes. But did I experience what a lot of the guys who went over there did? No. And I'm not trying to say that I did. So, no. I mean, I wouldn't say I went through trauma in the Army.
No, that's all right. Well,
and just tough times and stuff that wasn't always a good time,
Well, and I was looking through the notes, and you mentioned ADHD, you mentioned emotional intelligence, you mentioned mental health. Yeah. Where along your journey did you start to understand some of these things about yourself?
That was like the last 3 or 4 years, dude. Maybe 5.
All right. Well, me too, man. I feel like that's like the last 3 or 4 years I've been like really going deep on like who I am. What have you found out along this journey about yourself?
It was like I didn't even. There's something powerful about having the words to express what you're experiencing. I've dealt with depression my entire life, right? It's been a part of my family's story that my family's only even talking about, like in the last couple of years, right? So like, I've lived with the drill sergeant that's screaming in my ear saying I'm a lazy piece of crap my entire life because I can't somehow figure out how to get off the couch some days. I thought that was normal. I didn't know that was called depression. So when I heard people talking about depression on TV or on radio or in a book, I didn't know that what they were talking about was what I had up here. I didn't connect the two things, right? So I thought I was normal, and I thought that was weird. Well, that sucks for those people. I don't know what that's all about. You know what I'm saying? And as I started to like sit here and like start to slowly put 2 and 2 together and realize, hang on a second, there's some connections here, right? There's some, I can all of a sudden start to understand some of the arc of my life, right? And start to realize I'm not making excuses. I'm not trying to say that people should feel pity for me or that even I should feel pity for me, but I can now at least understand, why maybe I struggled in some areas where other people didn't or didn't as much, right?
Like what areas? Like
I remember for years struggling to like be disciplined in some areas, like maybe like when I was in like youth group and like, have a quiet time every day, and I just could not just sit and read my Bible in the morning, or pray, or do some other practices, or be disciplined to be organized and have a day timer and like have my 5 task lists, knock those things out and whatever. And I would just be like the guy that have a pile of stuff, and somehow I would get crap done every day. And like the boss couldn't figure out why I didn't have a priority list. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it does on paper, but in practice, it just never worked, right?
Especially when you're younger, yeah, and you just don't.
And
have
I
the
would just
skills
feel
and don't
so
know.
much shame around, like, why can I not do this? I'll write the things down, and no matter what I do, they won't work. And everybody would, well, just try harder and just do this and just do that. And every time the word "just" shows up, it felt so belittling. Because
Try
it felt
harder.
like it's so easy. Just do this. Just do this. Because to them, it is. And yet to me, it's not. And if I ever said it's not that easy, it was you're just making excuses.
Yeah,
Stop
you're
being a
lazy.
pussy. You're being lazy.
Yeah.
You just don't want it. You're just not hungry. You're never going to achieve. Which just pushes a guy with depression down, 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 down. I must suck. I must not want it. I wish I could want it like this guy wants it. Why can't I be like Benny? Right? Whatever. Because like I can't apparently do what they can because it's just that simple, and I still can't do it. I must suck. That's the wiring that goes through my head.
Do you think that's what caused the depression, or do you think people are born with depression? Do you think it was your environment that caused the depression? You just didn't know it?
Dude, I don't know. I remember the day that I decided that self-abuse in my head was a good idea, though.
How
Right.
old were you when you did that?
13, 14, 15, something
Tell
like
me what
that.
that looks like. What's self-abuse? Because I've never heard that
Well,
term
and
before.
what I mean by self-abuse, I just mean like negative self-talk, right? There was I was in a youth group, and they were trying to, convict us of sin and things that we
What-
should
what religion?
change. Christian, non-denominational,
Oh,
no, it's non-denominational,
non-denominational. All right.
non-denominational, whatever, right?
I grew up Baptist, so like
It wasn't fire and brimstone kind of
Oh,
stuff.
it was
just-
fire and brimstone in my house.
No, I know what you're talking about, but this was just more like, if there's sin that you want to clear out of your life, and make a commitment to God and repent, all that kind of stuff, right? This wasn't like you're going to hell kind of stuff. This was just like whatever. And look, I remember like trying to stop trying to build a practice, and as in my mind, I don't have a ton of clear memories of like what was happening at the church, but I don't remember anybody at the church like being like bullying or abusive or anything like that. If anything, they were supportive, right? And I was too, right? God, I failed again. I'm going to try better.
There's
I
just so many
promise
rules.
Right, I promised this, but it was like every time I turned around, I kept failing. I kept failing. I kept failing. And I kept saying, God, I promised, and then I still failed. I promised, and then I still failed. I promised, and then I still failed. And I remember one night standing up, going, you know what? If all of this like positive support isn't working, I really want to stop. Maybe I'll just abuse myself instead. You suck. You clearly don't want it. You clearly don't care enough, right? And this kind of crap. And I don't know why that seemed like a good idea, A. And B, I don't know why that stuck, right? So I don't remember anybody teaching that to me in my head.
Was that internal? Was that internal, or did you externalize that?
It was all internal.
And so would you ever do anything to hurt yourself, or was it just all head trash? So it was all just head trash.
It was all head trash. All head trash. No, this wasn't like a, you deserve to die kind of a thing.
Gotcha.
This was just like okay, maybe instead of like saying, it's okay, Matthew, you'll do better next time as a means of trying to stop this thing. It was you suck as a means of trying to stop this thing. That was the logic.
Was it your mom? Was your mom harder on you, or your dad harder on you?
No. I don't remember either of them being hard on me.
Oh, okay.
That way.
That's
right?
interesting. You just felt it, even though they didn't say it. You just felt it, right? Like
I don't remember either of them being that way to me, right?
You just did it to yourself.
I just did it to myself, and for whatever reason, that stuck. So I am not a psychologist. I don't know how these things work, how the brain works. I lean towards thinking there's a natural inclination. Maybe it's genetic in my family that like a gutter, the ball's okay, but when it hits that gutter, wham, it just wants to kind of stay there. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
I don't know how these things work.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I got a younger brother.
And
he struggles with it too. He's 5 years younger.
Okay, and mom and dad, like they both were together the whole time,
Yep.
right? Like,
Yeah, they're still together now.
What'd they do for a living?
My mom did some administrative things. They both had an in-home business doing word processing in the 80s, computers and stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
No wonder you're so techie. Just so everyone knows, Matt Morrison's my hookup at AccuLinks. It's the CRM that I use for my, and he was the first person I talked to when I started Big Fish Contracting. The first person, because I was so excited to get a CRM. Not to change the subject, I don't want to talk about work stuff.
It's all right, dude. It's cool.
But like, that's cool though, because that makes me understand like how this parallel of you're so techie. But then, like, your personal life, you're all about, like, woodworking and, like, like some other hobbies. And I'm always wondering where the techie came from. But that makes sense.
I was born in 1977, and there was a computer in my house when my parents brought me home from the hospital. So
Steve, they probably got the first Apple.
It was something different. But anyway, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, so that's just been a part of my life.
Was there any pressure on you to, like, go to college? Was there pressure on you to go to work? No,
if anything, I wish they had. Like, I didn't go to college.
So you did this all to yourself. It sounds like your parents weren't like really like that, like that definitive in like this whole Matt Morrison issue.
If anything, I wish they kind of would have been like a little bit more pushing me in some direction. If anything, they didn't
give you.
push me in any
Okay,
direction.
ooh, that's a good. Wow, there you go. That's good self-reflection. They weren't hard on you enough. You don't think?
Not in that area. I mean, maybe in other areas, but I don't remember them being anything. It was just
Did you play sports at all?
Once, didn't like it, stopped.
Yeah, got too bored with it, right? Practice is boring, right?
No.
Well, that's the way I felt about it. I was like,
I much preferred computers,
Yeah, that's impressive. You remember the old the modem that the 14K modem that would just like sound like a phone.
Dude, those are the fast ones. I remember the ones where you had to take the phone and stick it in the cradle, and it was like 800 baud, dude.
I don't know that one. I remember the 14K modem, and then I remember just keep going up from there, and here we are right now streaming podcasts, live.
Right? It's nuts, huh?
It is crazy.
You could do it from your phone if you wanted to.
If we wanted to. So what was the point over the last 5 years that you wanted to start taking a deeper dive into who you are as a person? Like, what prompted that?
You know what? There was this moment. There was this shift for me in 2015. In 2015, there was this time that I was traveling. I wound up flying out of O'Hare Airport like 4 times over the course of like 6 weeks. And I have this routine where like I always get to the airport early and I always go to the bookstore and just look for books. Really, I look to see if a book's looking for me is the way that I say it, right? Basically, because rarely is there a book that I'm looking for. Usually I just say, anything look interesting, right?
Fiction or nonfiction?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Interesting.
Usually these days it's been nonfiction, but it doesn't matter. There's a handful of fiction authors that I'll pick up, but it's mainly I just look to see if anything jumps off the shelf at me. And more often than not, it doesn't. But every so often it does. And almost entirely when it does, it's well worth it to me, right? And so this book is on the shelf, and in my head, it practically jumped off the shelf and pimp smacked me in the face, right? And I picked this book up and I look at it and I'm all like, nah. And I get scared by it and I put it back on the shelf.
What book was it?
I'll get there. I knew I needed to buy this book, but I didn't. I chickened out. And the next 3 times I go to the airport, I kept seeing the book. It kept jumping off the shelf. I kept saying no. And finally, the 4th time, I was just like, all right, screw it. I had like a 4 or 5 hour flight to California, and I'm all like, fine. I'm not going to sit on a 4 hour flight without anything to read. And so I picked up a book called You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. It's a good book. Don't get me wrong. I don't know that I would say the book is like something special. Like, I don't know that it's, an amazing like work of whatever. I'm coming to believe, because I've read it now, and don't get me wrong, it's a good book. And if anybody wants to read it on the call, I would say by all means, go get it. It's a fine book. But what I think was more important was that I listened to that nudge that said, read the freaking book.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It's a bright yellow book that
there
just
was
says,
a right time, right place. I was in a right space. I don't know, I don't know what all was happening to me in the years leading up to it, but everything was was a confluence together that said, you need to get the freaking book. And I listened. you know, and it was like going 5 rounds with an emotional Mike Tyson on that plane going out there. It was like every page, dude, I've read a lot of books, serious, non-serious, goofy, spiritual, everything in between. And I have never had a book that it felt like I was like, every time I turned the page, it was like my eyes were getting drawn to something. There was something in there that was convicting me or smacking me around, or just a truth that was just hitting me in the face. And that thing just started on a shift of me saying, okay, something's going to give. Something's going to give. And, you know, that started me down this path of either self-reflection, self-discovery, changing my mind shift, getting rid of that negative self-talk, you know, reprogramming my subconscious, learning to love myself, learning to love others, learning to have compassion for other people, learning to just see the beauty, the sheer beauty in myself and in the world around me. It changed everything. I'm not saying that book changed everything.
Yeah,
I'm going to say that act of listening and being open, and then trusting and moving forward from that place changed everything, right?
And would you say you kind of went down a rabbit hole of like self-discovery and kind of like went hard, like you went intense with it, like
in the last year or two especially, just, you know, as more things just kept coming up, right? As you start doing the work of, okay, I need to reprogram my thoughts, you know, mindset stuff and whatever, right? And then as you start doing that, okay, then more stuff starts coming. Well, where did that stuff come from? Right?
Yeah. Well, what have you found out? I'm curious. Like, any crazy awakenings or anything?
I don't have all the answers. Some of that stuff is still coming up, but I'm realizing, like, so here was something that was really interesting that came up right recently, was how much, like, I noticed that, like, a lot of times when I would have something that I was really interested in, like I was really curious about, I would start down the path, then it felt like something inside would just like shut off all the fuel in the engine, if you will. Like, and I would like mourn it because I was so interested, and then like all the motivation was gone. And I'm not talking like one of those like just push through it. I'm talking like there was no gas in that engine. There was nothing going to ever happen to that thing again. And it was so frustrating to feel like I loved this thing and my brain was not going to let me push on this thing. And I was doing some exploring, like maybe last fall on this. I'm like, why does this keep happening? Like, where does this keep coming from? Like, I'll get excited. Like, it's like
that's why I tried to get you on the podcast, and you like,
no, it was actually, there was a whole lot going on last fall.
Yeah, man. I felt something going on with you. I didn't know what was happening.
That was different. That was different. But anyway, so I did some poking around at that, right? And what I realized was that, like, for a lot of my life, I had said no to myself, and I had said yes to other people. And when I played with that, I'm like, where is this coming from, right? And I realized that there was a lot of correlation to some stuff that had happened as a kid, like where my dad would like make me go places for reasons that didn't seem to make sense. And it was just basically like I was being forced to go places that I didn't want to go. And I wished I could have just basically shut him down, but I couldn't. And then as an adult, there were times when, like, I hate to get all like tropey and psychological, but, you know, my inner child wanted to do one thing, like, maybe stay at home and work in my shop. But then a customer would call and say, Matt, we really need you to come to our office and train. And I would say, sorry, inner child Matt, who really wants to stay home and be creative this weekend. This customer wants to go here. And it was like the same thing that my dad had done to me as a kid. Now I'm doing to myself. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. I feel like
what I started to find was every time that, like, I was coming up with this thing that I was interested in, it was like the little kid inside was rebelling, saying, oh, really? Cool. I'm going to take that away from you. Right. And I had to have this moment of realizing how much I had done that to myself, the thing that I used to hate my dad for doing to me. And learning to forgive myself, learning to love myself, learning to realize what I had done. And I had done it for good reasons, to serve people, to love on people, to help their business be successful. Right.
Do you think you did that? Do you think you did that because your whole life you wanted somebody to love on you?
I am realizing more and more how much, like, I love serving people and I love helping people be successful and I love helping them realize how awesome and amazing they are. But I'm also realizing how some of that, at least some of that, was a looking for validation, because when I did that, I'm the hero.
Yeah, we call it need for approval.
Yeah. I'm realizing how much of that was looking externally for validation. And I started wondering, why am I always looking externally for validation? Why do I need it?
Yeah,
Right?
and that leads you on a rocky road of life.
Exactly, because I always, if I have to get that externally, then I'm always at the need of getting it from somebody else. I'm never the source, right? If I can get it from internally, if I am confident in myself, right, then I don't need to fill that void with other things. That doesn't mean I still can't help people, but now I'm doing it from a healthy place. I'm doing it from a healed place rather than I need to do it more and more and more and more and more just to feel validated place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I always use an analogy of like, let's imagine that we're in Iraq. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a complete desert. Okay. And there's a water fountain right in the middle, right? Yeah. And it's beautiful. It's got marble around it. It's gushing. And you're there, right, close to the water fountain, right? And you have a cup. And that cup just is freaking flowing. It's overflowing. You got so much juice, right? And you feel so good, right? That's that inner child. That's the happy Matt. That's the happy Ben. But then what happens is you see off in the distance there's somebody out there that doesn't have that water. And for whatever reason, it's like we're in ambulance mode, and we gotta we walk out through the desert, walk away from the fountain. We only have our cup now. Now it's not flowing anymore, but we have some in our cup. But we have to drink some along the way. We pour some out along the way, and then I think what happens to a lot of us is that we are exhausted by the time that the cup is empty. But guess what? That fountain's back a mile back the other way, and now we gotta crawl and like scrape and try to get back to that fountain, because as soon as we get back, we know we're going to fill it back up. But it's just like, these extremes, right? Of like where we're either all in or all out, and it never feels good. And I like to use that. It's one of my favorite analogies is the fountain in the middle of the desert.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I try to tell people just to stay close to your fountain, because now I make people come to me. Like as much as possible. Now, every once in a while, like when, I think it's healthy, right? Once in a while, I'm talking like once a month, once a quarter, I'll go out and go out way out of my way and make something awesome happen. But I also have, now that I'm older, and you probably are going to understand this too, it's like, I know where empty is. Like, I'm not going to run out of gas anymore. Like, cause as soon as I get to like half, I'm going to like start to go back to the fountain. Be like, all right, stop, self-care, need a day off, need to just chill. Want to go do whatever makes you happy. But like in my 20s and my early 30s, it was just extreme, right? Like, I mean, it was extreme. And, it's an interesting journey.
I think the analogy is a little different for me. I mean, I like what you're saying. For me,
that's my analogy.
For me, I feel like that's talking about like energy and recharging and restoring yourself and doing rejuvenating things, which I like. Don't get me wrong. I like it. For me, it was about validation. And so if I'm going to use the fountain as validation, it was more like I didn't have a fountain. And the only way for me to fill that cup was to go to you and say, can you fill my cup? And what I'm doing now is I'm learning, no, I'm the fountain and I'm capable of filling my own cup. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm capable of being the source of my own validation, of my own sense of self-worth, of my own sense of value and worth. I don't need you or somebody else to say I'm valuable, and you're the only way that I know that I'm valuable, right? And I'm learning to take what I had given to people for so long, right? What I had gone to people for, and realized, no, I've got my own fountain that I can carry with me from a validation perspective. Energy, different thing. I get that, right? So anyway, that was a moment of realization where I was like, holy crap, I've been doing to myself what my dad did to me. And I remember what it was like to feel powerless when my dad did it to me. And having to have that moment of going, whoa.
Do you still get depressed now that you can try to control it a little bit more? Because now you know what like triggers you to like get filled up.
You know what? Do I still get depressed? Yeah, because I think to some degree it's a chemical thing or a biological thing, and I don't.
You do think it's chemical?
I guess.
I don't know. I'm asking you.
I don't know what causes it. I don't know what causes it because there are times when I can't point to anything, right? Like I remember one time, it was maybe last summer, my wife and I went out to breakfast. We had a good breakfast. It was a good day. There was nothing that I can recall happening that day bad, right? Wasn't like anything coming up bad. Didn't get any bad news. Nothing, right? I'm sitting on the couch and all of a sudden this wave hits me. I'm like, the hell was that? Where'd that come from? What's causing this? Now, intellectual brain Matt is like, okay, problem solve. Did it come from this? Did it come from that? Where did whatever. Couldn't come up with anything, right? I'm like, okay, let's try all the things that usually fix it, right? I'm going to come down to my workshop. This is my happy place. One of the reasons for my workshop is for my mental health, right? That's why I have this. That's why I come down here to build things, to create things, to whatever, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to build things, and that wasn't working. I'm going to try to put some music on. That wasn't working. Put a podcast on, like a motivational thing. That wasn't working. Try to meditate. That was like none of my little tricks.
Because you were trying too hard.
Exactly, right? But none of the things that usually would help were helping, right? And at some point, I was like, there was this moment that I said, I am at war with myself right now. And there's a truth here, and that is I am, in this moment, depressed. I am. I don't like it, but I am. And I can do one of two things. I can try to sail into that headwind and fight it like Ahab, the whale, screw you, and yell into the wind and try to force it. But I just spent the last 3 hours trying to fight it. It didn't work, right? Try to go against what is. It is. I don't like it, but it is. Or I can just basically put put the sail up and put the rudder in and say, let's just go with the flow. I am depressed, and sit with it and feel it and just let it wash over me. Hi, I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to fight against you. I'm not broken. I just am depressed right now. Hi. And you know what happened? About 10 minutes later, it was gone.
When are we talking about, like right now?
No, it was like last summer, right? There was this moment that was like But you remember every part. It was the first time in my life, Benny, that I didn't try to say that I'm broken. I need to fix this, and I need to stop this, and I need to solve it. And this is obviously bad. This is obviously wrong. This is obviously broken, and I'm obviously a sinner, or God hates me, or I don't know, whatever. All the various things that I had told myself over the years as some way to explain this crap that was going on in my head. I tried every explanation in the world that I could come up with, and none of them ever made sense. None of them ever worked. None of them ever solved the problem. For the first time, I said, I am depressed. Hi. And let's just feel it.
Wow. Step into it. You're like almost like stepping into it and be like, it's almost like going into a fire, right? Like it's almost like, all right, I'm mentally just going to go into the fire. I'm going to feel it. And then how do you get out? Like, do you think that allows you to get out because you feel it?
I wasn't doing it to get out, Benny. That's the paradox. I was
saying, you know me. I'm a mover and a shaker, so I'm always trying to achieve and
then enjoy being depressed, right? Because the whole point was like, I was just going to say, I'm not broken. Hi, experience being me, right? Experience saying I'm not broken. Experience just being who I am, and love myself as being depressed, and then it was just gone because it wanted to be seen,
Yeah, no, I mean, it's good. I appreciate you being so open and honest about it. I think this is going to help a lot of people. How is this, I guess, you really label it depression. I'm always afraid to use labels because I'm thinking, like, if I say it, that means it's actually happening. Like, I come from that school of thought where, like, I say, like, oh, hey, I'm thirsty. And all of a sudden, like, I'm thirstier now, like, because I said it. Like, I'm almost like I manifested, like, if you say, oh, I'm depressed, it's almost like you're manifesting depression. and which, you know, to me, like, I feel like it could be a slippery slope. But how has this affected your marriage, and what kind of how does this affect you and your wife? Because you guys have been married for God knows how long.
22 years now.
Yeah.
And you know what? I find this. I can steal the power of darkness by shining a light on it. Oh. Right? So the longer I didn't talk about it, right? Darkness only gets power when we pretend it doesn't exist, right? So the longer I didn't talk about it, the longer I didn't talk about these icky things, these gross things, these things that I didn't like, the longer I just like, the longer you, the thing that is insidious about mental health and depression in particular is that it fools you into thinking that you're by yourself, that you have to face it alone, that nobody else faces it. I mean, that's what I thought for 20 or 30 years, but for no other reason because I didn't have a damn word for it, right? I mean, that was part of it, right? But also because there's a lot of shame around it. Nobody talks.
Well, nobody talks about the guys don't talk about their feelings, especially our generation.
Well, especially guys don't talk about it, but people in general don't talk about it, especially when you're on social media and you're a mover and a shaker and you're the smiling Benny. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not trying to pick on you, right?
No,
nobody
I
wants to talk about that. Everyone wants to talk about the wins and the successes. Everyone wants to talk about hitting the gym and the diets and the money and all that kind of good stuff. But no one wants to talk about this, right? And what happens when you don't do that is then you've got somebody who's watching, right? If this was Matt Morrison 10 years ago, but you were Benny today, right? And look, I love your stuff. I love your attitude. I love your persona. I love your personality. I love your vulnerability, right? But if I were to see you and I see all of the smiles and I see the kid and I see the wife and I see the successes, but I don't see people talking about depression, what's that going to do? That's going to drive me further into the false corner of thinking that I'm by myself. I'm not. You just told me you face it. But nobody ever talks about that.
So let me play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Are you supposed to? Because you've seen the people that are on the social media that are negative Nancy's the whole time too. So where is the? Are you saying just play 50-50? Like, hey, good day, post it. Bad day, post it. Like, is that what you're saying? Like, be just more real?
That's my personal style. I mean, I find it. My own personal assessment of what I see a lot of influencers doing is all they do is they post their wins and they allude to their failures, but they never post their failures, right? There was a dude that I used to follow.
Especially not the current failures. Now, we'll talk about, because now we'll leverage our story from the past now.
Yeah. There was a dude that I used to follow that was always, like, every time you turn around, 4:30 in the morning at the gym, talking about crushing this and setting goals that and, you know, whatever else, right?
Making you feel this big.
He would say that there were days, guys, there's been days that I didn't go to the gym. There's been days I blew my diet. There were days I slept in. Mofo, you ain't never posted a picture of that.
You think he was just saying that to kind of like,
I don't know if he did or I don't know if he did or not.
Yeah, we don't know if it's on purpose.
I'm not here to say if he did or not. What I am saying is that every damn picture he ever posted is of him at the gym at 4:30 in the morning with his, you know, EDM soundtrack in his truck while he's driving and him eating healthy food and running through his neighborhood with his weighted vest on. Mofo ain't never posted a picture of him failing. Yeah. He just said he did.
He's never had a Snickers bar, you know. And,
right? He says he did, but he never posts about that. And so the implication is that he's always crushing it every single day. Every day's a win, no day's a failure. He just says he's failed, but he never shows us failing.
So why do you put so much stock into that if you know that that he's can't be perfect? So like, why are you?
I'm not putting stock in it. What bugs me is that I see people out there doing that. And then I see young kids coming in and they're inspired by that. And they think that they can attain that. They think that perfection is available to them. And so they work and they work and they push and they push and they grind and they grind and they hustle and they hustle. And I'm not saying that hard work's a bad thing. We've all worked hard. I've worked hard. You've worked hard. We've all worked long hours. We've all flown long time, stayed up late, gotten up early, done all those various things. And we'll probably do it again. I'm not saying don't do that. But what happens is you do it over and over and over and over and over again. But nobody posts when they get divorced as a result of that. Nobody posts when they fall into a depression, when they start getting a drug habit. They just kind of fall off of social media because now they're in rehab. But they're not posting now.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed like this, and I struggle with this too. because it's a fine line between like, all right, first of all, you know, do I want to air all my dirty laundry that's currently happening, right? Yeah. Currently. Or do I want to wait a year and then tell a story that's where it's more anecdotal? And then also, you got to remember, especially with social media, like, it's not just my life, right? You know, there's my company, there's my family, like there's all these other people that are affected by it. And because when you have such a voice, I could say, oh, you know, me and my wife are fighting today, you know, and it sucks. And we're screaming at each other. But who's that going to serve?
Yeah. I mean, I think
I'm asking, I
don't think you just say like, yeah, this morning my wife, you know,
or I started drinking. Listen, I'm sober for 12 years, and all of a sudden I took a drink last night, man. And I'm like, you know, like,
see, I don't think. I think there's a difference between like, here's the thing, my wife said this, and I said this, and then she said that. I mean, we don't need to necessarily do that, but to at least admit that, you know, today I screwed up and I said some things that I shouldn't have said before. You know, today I screwed up on a goal that I shouldn't have screwed up on. And I failed hardcore and I feel guilty, you know, whatever, right? You don't have to give like all the dirty laundry about like, you know, exactly, you know, what you did, that you're, you know, the exact words that you said or whatever it is. I mean, I don't know. That's what I feel when I see these things, because it feels so disingenuous. And what really makes me sad about it is watching guys follow those guys and then knowing that they're being led down this path of an ideal that's not attainable. Because what they think they're going to get is only leading them to the same destructive path that I see these guys. I see these guys wind up in rehab. I see these guys wind up getting divorced. They just disappear off of social media and they show up 6 months later having gotten divorced. Now they got a new girlfriend, having gone to rehab, but they just disappeared for a little while. Right? Nobody realized the cost of that grind, the cost of all of that hustle, the cost of all of that sacrifice, the cost of all of that time away from their family, because they didn't post about that. Right?
What, I mean, don't you think that we're all like diamonds that need to be like, we're all rough cut diamonds that need to be like worked on and chipped away at to become beautiful and perfect?
Of course.
So, I mean, like, where I'm trying to understand, because like this is very fascinating. First of all, how much time do you spend on social media every day, you think?
More than I want, but not nearly as much as I used to.
So give me a number.
I'm probably on.
Get your phone out. Get your phone out. Do the thing.
I don't know. I'm probably on Facebook, if I had to guess, 20, 30 minutes a day.
That's not very much.
And I'm also on TikTok. Some days almost none. Other days.
Do you post on TikTok?
Yeah, that's why I have not been on Facebook much.
Do I follow you on TikTok?
No, because not too many people know me on TikTok. I'm only recently coming out.
Are you doing weird videos on TikTok?
No, I'm not. I honestly.
What's your name on TikTok? Matt Morrison?
No. TikTok doesn't know my name. I am Wood and Spirit, but I intentionally went to TikTok a year ago and did not let anybody knew I was there because I wanted to.
Such a good question. Wow, you got 10,000 followers, bro.
Yeah.
Dang, man.
No, I went there and did not let TikTok know the word roof or Acculinks or Matt or Morrison or anything, and I did not let anybody know that I was there. I needed a place where I could go and say, if you are going to find me and like me, it's on my own merit, not on who I am, not on where I work, not on my industry, not on what I've done for you, not on where I'm from. It's me. It's my thoughts. That's good. It's my ideas. And so it was a safe space for a year. And at this point, I'm now okay with people knowing me. But it was a time that I was just like, no.
It's like your own little creative bubble that you can just kind of like just go in your wonderland and just create what you want.
Dude, I have created more friendships and relationships and things in the last year there than I did in the last 10 years on Facebook, because the people that found me, we had shared values, we had shared goals.
Yeah.
It was amazing, the relationships that I built up there. Yeah.
What, do you have like friends in like your real life, like in your like, you know, like your neighborhood, or like do you guys like you and your wife like hang out with a bunch of other couples, or like is it pretty much on work and social media and home?
I don't have many people in town. No.
I was just curious. I'm
few-
always curious because I feel like I don't have any friends, like
I'm the same
real
way.
life friends. Like it's like they're like either fellow entrepreneurs that like we talk to each other, or there are other people in the roofing space. And it's kind of like
I've got some coworkers that are friends that I can hang out with.
Yeah.
But in general, no, it's funny. I can travel to almost any city or state in the country and go hang out with people, but in my own home state, not too many.
What you started a podcast recently? What's it called? Crazy Days?
It's called Crazy Day.
I thought that was cool because I always kind of knew your personality. I knew it was very different than mine, and that's kind of why I liked you. Right? I'm attracted to that. I think it's kind of cool. It's been fun.
You attracted to me, Benny Fisher?
Well,
not
like physically. I mean, you are a good-looking guy, but just like I don't know, the way that you're in, like you have a lot of introspection. You have a different perspective than a lot of the people that I hang out with, obviously, in the different circles. And there's not too many guys that I know that are willing to talk about their feelings.
Yeah.
And I really think that's cool, and I really think you should lean into that more. I think that that's good. Do you have any tips or tricks out there for anybody looking to find them? How to find more about themselves, and if they're struggling with depression. Do you have any words of wisdom before we wrap this podcast up?
I'll tell you what happened to me last year. I started a practice of choosing. I try to pick a mantra every year, and last year's mantra was to notice the details. And when I pick these mantras, I pick them where they can be a little vague, and I'm not trying to justify them to anybody. It's a personal thing. And that started with just a more of a curious practice of like, I wonder how many details I can notice in the things around me. Started off as just, I wanted to notice more beauty in the world, right? How many details could I notice in something that I would normally walk past, right? And so it was more of an intellectual thing at first, right? How slowly could I open a door, and how many details could I notice in that door, right? I read a book about a monk who had a practice of chewing soup, and it was kind of funny. But the premise was normally we would just slurp down a thing of soup, right? And his practice was, how mindful could you be about a spoonful of soup? How many details could you find in that spoonful of soup? How slowly could you swallow that spoonful of soup?
Mindfulness, baby.
And so that started it. But what that gradually turned into was, what am I feeling in the moment, right? And that turned into a whole lot of self-reflection, a whole lot of it would be things like, that's interesting. Every time I have to go be with that person, my shoulders tense up. I never noticed that before. That's interesting. I get a headache every time I have to go do that thing. That's interesting. Why is it that I get a whole lot of anxiety every time I have to go into a meeting, right? Or something to that effect. Things that I had never connected.
Yeah, because you didn't slow down. You didn't really slow down.
Exactly,
yeah.
right? I had built this practice over the first few months of just noticing details in this handle of this chisel or this water bottle or the soup, right? That just started as a mental or a physical practice, but it started to flow into physical sensations and emotions. And all of a sudden, I'm all like, I don't think I want to be around somebody that makes my anxiety come up all the time, because my body's reacting to something that maybe I'm not noticing myself, right? Or I want to change some things. And that started a whole lot of self-reflection around this anxiety, around some of this depression stuff, around some emotional stuff, and really helped me start to realize more of who I am, more of what I love, and more of what really lights me up, because I want to do more of what lights me up and
what lights you up.
What doesn't.
What lights you up?
What lights me up? Well, I mean, I love making things for people. I love making beautiful things in my workshop. I love making things, right? I love, I love fretwork.
We're all creators, by the way. We're made in God's likeness. So
I love making things like this in my workshop.
That's beautiful. Wow. Very detailed.
I love doing my podcast. I love sharing with people. I love finding.
Your podcast is the most interesting podcast I've ever listened to.
Thank you.
Take that as a compliment, because you just go on and I kind of remember when you were launching it, because you were asking me some questions, and then I got the impression that you would record something. If you didn't like it, you'd record something different, and you were really. It's not like you just did one take. You really put a lot of you really cared about what was going out into the world. Would that be a fair statement?
They're mostly one takes.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah. Right. The only time that they're not is if I stumble over a word. I'll go back and record the word to get the word.
That's the perfectionism in you that you can't shake, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, if I wanted to say Benny and I come out like Ben, okay, I'm going to go back and say Benny, or whatever. But for the most part, it's in one take. I mean, I do have them written out, but
how many episodes are you up to?
I just published, I think, 18 or 19 this morning.
And it's pretty much a solo, right? Or you had a guest finally, right?
I did an interview once with my mom.
Or your mom, okay.
My mom is the originator of the word crazy, or the term Crazy Day, so it felt appropriate. I've thought I want to do some interviews at some point. I haven't eliminated the idea of opening up to other formats, but thus far it's been primarily monologues. But,
well, you'll know. I mean, listen, it'll just be like anything else in life. It'll just one day you'll be like, oh, I don't want to do it that way anymore. I'm going to go do it this way, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's cool about having a podcast called Crazy Day.
Exactly.
You can literally do whatever you want.
Exactly. So
there's no rules. What's your mom and dad and your wife think about this new Matt Morrison?
My wife's all on board because she's kind of going through a similar journey. I mean, it's different, but similar. My mom and dad they have some apprehensions about some of my approaches to things, but at the end of the day, they are loving the fruits of it. Let's put it that way.
They're strict Christians probably. So like they want to like they play in like there's a lane. It's a very tight lane, right?
Yeah. So they're a little bit concerned that I don't necessarily fall into some of the same camps that they did, or that they do rather. But at the end of the day, as the old Bible verse says, they'll know them by their fruit. And I personally find that the fruit on my tree today is way better than any fruit that I ever had before.
I love that. That was good. I love talking to you. I feel like I could talk to you. I know most of the time that we talk, we're texting each other.
Yeah. Right.
But every once in a while, like, when I watch those videos, those like, when you do a screencast, like you're all over the screencast, obviously, in the company you work for,
yep.
Like your videos are always in there. So like, if I want a little Matt Morrison, you have a voice that really is very, I don't know. It's almost like a lullaby. It literally could it's almost like not put me to sleep, but like it makes me like just like chill. It's like very chill. Like I want you should lead guided meditations. Has anybody told you that?
No. Every time I put one of the release notes out at Acculinks, though, the support people are like, "Oh, Matt's videos are so relaxing."
Yeah, they're so chill, man. Like
we do like Acculinks ASMR videos soon, I think, or something. I don't know. So
I feel like we could talk all day. There's, if you've ever listened to my show, I got 5 questions I ask every guest.
Oh yeah. What's funny? Like when we were going to do, I know we had booked one back in November, and I was like, all right, I got my 5 answers ready to go, and now
I feel like you chickened out. I feel like you chickened out on me.
No, dude, I seriously had a family emergency that I had to. We can talk offline. I did not.
I got you.
In all seriousness,
I'm glad that everything's all right. It's just you. I know, but you were super nervous. You were. I don't know if you were nervous. You were asking me a lot of questions. Which I took that as like, oh, he's like, he's very particular.
That's not untrue, but that was not why I.
Yeah, I know. It was just a sequence. It was a sequence of events, and I probably just.
I can totally see why it looked that way, but that was not the case. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because we have different personalities, and I can be very strong and dominant, and I'm trying to work on that. I'm trying to recover. I'm like a recovering dominant.
You're recovering alpha or something like that.
Yeah. I still want to be somehow alpha. I just don't want to be like all the way, like driven like all the time, because that doesn't serve anybody.
Yeah.
It doesn't even serve myself. So anyway, here's the 5 questions. So you're on an island. There's nobody else on the planet. You're allowed to take one book with you. What book are you taking with you?
I am bringing the Tao Te Ching.
The what?
The Tao Te Ching.
What is that? Is that like a Buddhist book?
No, it's the Chinese. It's a Chinese book of philosophy from about 2,500 years ago. It's about living in harmony with nature. If I'm all by myself on an island, I guess I need to learn how to live in harmony with nature.
Spell that, because like my God.
DAO DEJING. A couple different spellings, but if you look up Tao Te Ching, you'll find it. Yeah.
All right, and then you are allowed to take one movie with you. What movie are you going to bring with you?
God, I mean. I keep wondering where electricity is coming from, but I'll
don't worry about it. Yeah, you just listen. It's like it's not all the way a real thing.
I am not a big movie guy, but if I had to pick one, I'm going to go Princess Bride.
Oh wow, that's a cool movie. What restaurant are you going to put on your island?
You know what? I'm going to go with the buffet in the basement of the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas because, dude, I went there and they had food from everywhere in the world. Like, you know, I remember this one because like one dude was like, I'd go Chipotle, one of your guests, and one of your guests was like, I forget what all they put.
Yeah, they always pick like one like fixed thing. You're the one that wants it all. You got a smorgasbord.
If I like Chipotle, I like KFC, I like Ruth's Chris for that matter. But if I had to eat Ruth's Chris every night, by about the seventh night, I'd be tired of steak. But you get me to that buffet at the bottom of the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas, every day there was something different. I wouldn't ever get tired of it.
There you go. All right, you're allowed to take one vacation, go anywhere in the world for a week. Where are you going to go?
I want to go to New Zealand.
All right, why?
Because I want to see where they built that Hobbit city in the Lord of the Rings.
Oh, wow. All right. I know I'm a big fan of the book called Legacy. It's about the New Zealand All-Black team, rugby team.
Yeah,
the most,
I know of them. I play with I work with a bunch of rugby players, so I've heard of them, but yeah.
And then the last question is always a good one, is if you could spend 24 hours with one person, it could be someone famous, it could be somebody dead, it could be somebody alive. Who do you want to spend 24 hours with and talk to?
Wayne Dyer.
Wayne Dyer.
Yeah.
Well, there you go, folks. That is a great episode. Now, if somebody wants to reach out to you, or I guess here, how do they find your podcast? So that'd be a good place to start. You guys should start listening to his podcast.
Yeah. So if you go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, most of the major players, if you look up Crazy Day, you'll find it. It's called Crazy Day. It's got like the artwork looks like a road. It says Crazy Day. Enjoy the ride. I've got a website called woodandspirit.net, and I've got a tab on my website called podcast, and there's links there which you can track
there you go
as well.
Yeah, cool.
There's a contact me page there if you want to reach out about woodworking or just say hi. You can hit me up there as well. And there's links to my TikTok there.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Yeah. This has been fun.
Yeah,
if you guys got value out of this podcast, like, subscribe, put a comment below. If you're struggling with mental health and you want to chat with somebody about it, I would chat with you about it. I know Matt would chat with you about it. You know, we love this stuff. So, and that's why I think, we're at the right spot of our life, and that we can share. We have the next 40, 50 years to share everything we've been learning.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah.
Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you guys on the next episode next Friday.
Should be good.
Thank you for listening to the Big Fish Cares podcast.